Today I want to talk about carry guns I simply do not trust. Trust is a big word, and the whole idea around this video is to give you my personal experience, right? This is not going to apply to everybody. And some of y'all may adamantly disagree with my opinions of these guns. All I ask, watch the video at the end. Leave your opinion, because I definitely want to hear that, no matter what it is, down below. Now remember, when I talk about trust, I will obviously talk about reliability, but also trusting my abilities to put shots on target. I've reviewed a lot of concealed carry guns here. I've done competition pistols, I've done high-end pistols, budget pistols, rifles, World War II guns. I do a lot here. But concealed carry is a big part of what I do, and I know when I get a carry gun in my hands that I can confidently put shots on target and it's concealable, I know we got a winner there. But of course it has to be reliable, and that's a big part of this as well, but I have to feel comfortable with it too. And so that doesn't always mean that I'm going to make the most amount of friends in the industry, but what it does mean is that I will bring you trusted reviews from my personal experience, and that is my job here. Whether those updates turn sour or they actually turn out to be better than what I initially thought. No matter what gun you see on this table, that's the approach I take. So we're going to get this one out of the way. Just wanted to use that as a set piece, and the first one I'm going to talk about is the Mossberg MC2SC. This is one of my most recent reviews that I've done, and I had a lot of requests on this gun, and unfortunately things didn't pan out the way I was hoping. And so the first thing that I will talk about is their decision to go with this crossbolt style safety. Now you can get these without a safety, don't get me wrong. But if you want to go with the safety version, the safety should make sense as far as the location. Most manufacturers will put it up here on the frame, right? Swipe it down, turn it off, boom, you're good to go. But this right here, being so close to the magazine release, it concerns me. Because if we're in an environment like this where it's controlled, or even at the range, you may think, what's the problem? But in a stressful situation, my fear is that somebody may hit that, then maybe drop the magazine, go to load a new one, try to fire a round, and boom, nothing happens. And so I really question why the engineers would put it there so close to the magazine release. And you got to think, these things happen very quickly, right? I've never been in that situation, but from research and understanding how most self-defense things happen, it is quick. For example, Mrs. Hexshot, she was robbed when we used to work at Sonic Drive-In, right? That was my first job. And she was robbed at 8 months pregnant. And from the time she opened the door to go into the store, as soon as she turned around, the guy was on top of her, right, with a knife. And so, again, these things happen quickly, and I don't want to have to run the risk of disabling my gun with that being so close to a mechanic of the gun that I may have to utilize. Now again, you can get these without a safety, and I understand that. And so your reaction time and your awareness obviously is super important, but I don't want to have to fumble with something like that that could potentially get in my way of saving my life. Or worse, it gets inadvertently turned on. I don't know, I mean, it's super audible and tactile, but I don't know, it gets turned on, you put it in a holster, you chamber around, you think everything's good, you have to pull it out, and it's unsafe. So don't like that decision. I also don't like the decision they made on how to break the gun down. Most manufacturers now have figured out, if we pull the trigger, boom, we got some takedown latches here or a lever, and we pull the slide off. Now I can appreciate that they want to mitigate any kind of negligent discharges, but essentially what you do is you pull the back plate off and the striker comes out. And so when I was having issues at the range, which I'll talk about here in a minute, I actually dropped the striker in the dirt. And so it led to what could have been another issue on top of the issue I was already having. Fortunately, I cleaned it out. I just don't like the idea of having to take the striker out every time you take the gun down. And then another thing that I will talk about here is my inconsistencies with it. And you can call it my issue, but man, I've shot a lot of these guns. And I know how to shoot. And it took tens of thousands of rounds to get there. But I'm a good shooter, especially with these smaller guns. I've spent a lot of trigger time behind them. This gun made me feel like I was almost brand new. It's got a really serious 12 o'clock hold. like one of the highest 12 o'clocks hold. If 12 o'clock, or if there was a number higher than 12, that's where you should be holding. And so, consistently hitting low and to the left. And I would get into a rhythm, start to hit the target, and then boom, I'd be off, right? I'd be back off target. And then I'd recenter. And then, I feel like it took a lot more thinking than what's necessary to shoot a gun. You line the sights up, you make sure your trigger pull is straight back to the rear, boom. Consistency, right? That's what I'm looking for. And with this gun, I was anything but consistent. And so you could say that's my issue, but I really don't think so. I actually had a viewer reach out to me on Instagram, and he's like, hey man, I replaced these springs, it was $20, and that fixed a lot of my issue. And so while I can appreciate that, I don't like the fact of having to change anything on my carry gun, especially internals, any kind of springs, anything with the trigger. I like to keep my especially my carry guns stock as possible. And so, I don't like the idea of having to put springs in this brand new gun just to be able to get it run and for me to be more effective with it. I would rather just learn the gun, right? Whatever setup that may be, and go from there. So that's my issue with the Mossberg. They've done a lot of good things here. This is a good launch point for their future iterations, but this iteration here, I'm just not a huge fan of. This one hurts, man. This is the Canik MC9, the Mete, right? And I've talked so highly about this carry gun, since I got it earlier this year, that I was honestly shocked when I had issues with it. So let me tell you about it. We were at the range, this was last month, okay? Right now we're in September, so this was the beginning of August, I guess. And we had some rain come through, moderate rain. So I was doing like a 7-gun comparison. All the guns were down like this. Of course, they were being rained on. And so out of all the guns we shot that day, this was the only one with issues. So interestingly enough, you would fire a round, boom, it would eject that casing, pick up a new round. Sometimes it would go back in the battery, sometimes it wouldn't. When it wouldn't go back in the battery, I tapped the back of the slide, pulled the trigger, nothing. Dead trigger. Okay. But it had a new round in the chamber. So it was really weird. And so anyways, I put out the update video letting people know, hey, I want you to be aware of this. And then I reached out to Canik. And so after a little bit of back and forth with them, not in a bad way, just kind of telling them what happened and them asking questions and all that, they sent me a new recoil spring. So that's kind of where we're at with it now. I did notice even in my initial videos with this gun, you would get like this slide jumping effect. And essentially, instead of the slide just coming back and going forward, right, the slide would hesitate sometimes to go back in the battery. And I thought it was weird, but it never gave me any real issues. And so I'm hoping that that is actually what's going on. I could see it actually being the issue. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because Canik did a lot of really good things on this gun. The serrations, optics ready, the sighting system is okay. The trigger is really good. You get to the wall, very little travel from there, it breaks. It's a really good shooter. It's got a little bit higher bore axis, but I can live with that because, like I said, man, it does a really good job. You have your 12-round mag, flush mag right there. You got a 15-round extended. They send you a lot of stuff with the gun, so it's a good value. And this is one of those ones, man, I'm really, really hoping that that spring fixes our issue. When I do the update, though, even with the new spring, I'm going to make sure I pour water in here. Let it sit, pour water in here again, and just make sure that this thing is running up to par. And the last one we'll talk about today, the Keltec P15. This is an interesting gun, man, and I will admit I'm not a huge Keltec fan, but I do appreciate that they try different things. They don't stick to the mold, right? They don't just say, hey, okay, we have a successful design, that's what we're going with, that's what you got. I am admirable of the things they try. But then I scratch my head on some of the things that they do. Let me show you why on the P15, first of all, I scratch my head. First of all, grip safety. Now, the Equalizer has a grip safety. I'm a huge fan of the equalizer, but I've also mentioned in my videos of this gun, I don't like the grip safety. Just not a fan. Another thing that they've done here is they got a really deep hook to the trigger. This is kind of like an old school way of doing things. Most manufacturers are going to a flat face trigger because it gives you, the shooter, an advantage in putting out better shots. And with your carry gun, that's important. And so I really don't like that. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of it on the equalizer either. The thing the equalizer has going for it, though, is at least it's a decent trigger, decent pull. And this thing shoots really well. That's where I mainly had the issue with the Kel-Tec. This one, you pull the trigger, you get to the wall. It's got a little bit of, take up there, right? After the wall. A little bit of creep in the trigger there, if you will. But it honestly feels pretty good. When I first got this thing into my FFL, I pulled the trigger and I was like, dude, they did it. They made a nice trigger. Okay. Then I get to the range. And first of all, I couldn't believe the amount of recoil, but I guess I can because it's so freaking light. And that's one thing Kel-Tec does. They make a really light and concealable gun, but that translates to way more recoil than what is necessary. Now, it's not like you can't control the recoil, right? And I'm not saying that. It is probably the snappiest 9mm as far as the Micro 9s that I've ever had.
Ooh.
I mean, for self-defense purposes, that's a decent group.
Now, if I wasn't somebody that shoots a lot, and let's say this was my first carry gun, right? Or my first gun, I may get this and be like, dude, this sucks. Why do people enjoy this? Or I'm trying to teach my significant other with it, and she picks it up and she's like, this is awful, right? To me, there's better options out there that have less recoil and they're better shooters. Where am I hitting?
I don't even know where I'm hitting. Oh, I'm hitting low. Dude, I gotta see where I'm printing here. That's not the target I was going for, by the way. Wow. Okay, so I will have a Kel-Tec P15 for sale here very soon. I'm just kidding, by the way. It does have a sharp recoil impulse. I don't know where the hell my bullets went. Only God knows where they went, because I was going for the very first little steel target right there that I've hit with every single gun I own in my collection, except for this one. So I don't know. They went in the trees or something.
Let me try it.
You know what's disappointing? Hold on. Let me just vent. What's disappointing is that it seems like a good concept, but everything I thought about this gun going in is exactly how I feel about it now after shooting it. Like, the magazine release is sticking, right? You have this dumb grip safety. I don't even know why it's there. It's just making my hand raw. You have this squared off rear, you know what I mean? Like, The sights suck. It's got a ton of recoil for what it, anyways, all right, you're up.
And so I told my buddy Mike, I was like, hey man, you're gonna love this thing. And here's his reaction.
I don't know how I feel about that. This thing is snappy. Real snappy.
So you like it as much as I said you would?
No. Not even close.
I told him he was gonna love that gun.
And so I couldn't help but laughing because it does have way more recoil than what's necessary. If they would have added more weight to this, I would have rather had that and a more shootable package than what they've provided here. Another thing, man, that grip is so small. Let's look at almost any other gun, even this one. The Spectracom, right? It's got a relatively small grip. This one feels so good in the hand though. And even when you compare it to the Kel-Tec, it's still a little bit wider. And the way they've designed the Spectracom feels so good in the hand, man. They nailed the balance with it. Almost every single one of these is a little bit wider. Equalizer, a little bit wider, right? And so it's so small down here, and yet so large feeling up here, it creates an imbalance in the gun, I feel. Now, it's a little bit better with the extended mag they send you, which the magazine options I think are fine, but it's still not a great balance to me in the hand. And so it leads to further inconsistencies. Or if they would at least had the ability to put back straps on here, that could have, fixed a lot of that so we can actually fill that gap in a little bit more. I think with the way this is designed, especially if you have bigger hands than what I do, that's going to lead to over trigger fingering. Over trigger fingering. That's not even a word, but it sounds it sounds a little weird, I guess. But you know what I'm saying? Too much trigger finger in the trigger guard, and it's not a far reach to the trigger either. And so I have issues with it, man. It's also got a really aggressive grip texturing. So this against your skin would suck. Definitely have an undershirt between that and your skin if you're gonna have that. The magazine release, it's kind of tucked into the frame there, and when you do that, the magazine actually came out better that time. When you do that, I don't want to say it's like too much force. It's at a little bit weird position for me. They put Torx screws throughout the frame. I don't understand this. Every manufacturer uses pins. They said, hey, just screw it down, boys. I don't know. I can't. I'm not saying that's how that went. That's just a total guess there. Another thing, this is not optics ready. This is something I've said in the past, that it is optics ready because it looks optics ready. It's got these 4 screws on top. It looks weird, right? This is a polymer piece that houses the rear sight, but it's not optics ready. So I called Kel-Tec to confirm this, and that's what they told me. They are working on a plate, though, that will allow you to mount. I think they're going to go with the RMSC footprint. And so, yeah, I don't know why they decided to do that either. Every manufacturer is going with an optics ready version. Again, they got screws up here. Yeah, it's not a gun I recommend, man. I think there's better options out there. And there's things I like about it that I've talked about in the review, but overall, I am not a fan. And so these are 3 more guns that I do not trust. Now, this doesn't mean that this is the end of this rodeo and all these guns go in the safe, never to be seen again. Of course, I will do an update on this one and this one. I have shot this one again, and my opinion really hasn't changed. Maybe there's I don't know. I don't really know what to do with the P15. I kind of think it is what it is at this point. but I will continue to do updates on the ones that I think have good potential. And when I redo those updates, or actually provide those updates, I will of course bring these back to the table for y'all to see. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. If you want to, join us on Patreon, or you can join us on the channel right here. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold 'em down.